Hey, it's Matt O'Neill from Matt O'Neill Real Estate, here today to talk about a book everyone has told me to read called The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. I've heard about this book for years. In fact, I bought a copy years ago, started to read it, and decided not to read it because it seemed too simplistic. Well, finally, after the urging of just about every one of my family members, I decided to pick it up and read it cover to cover, and I am so glad I did. You don't have to read the book because I'm actually going to, in the next couple of minutes, take you through what the major takeaways are, and I hope you really enjoy it. Miguel Ruiz starts out the book, and I'm just going to go through the notes I wrote in the inside cover, with this idea that you are dreaming right now. And that idea all of a sudden opened my eyes up to everything. He says we dream when we're asleep, but we also dream when we're awake. Everything in the world is created from our perception of reality. We don't actually see reality. We don't see other people. We don't see other people for who they are. We see other people for who we think they are. We create everything with our eyes. Our eyes are like movie projectors. Our mind is the movie projector. Our eyes are the screen, and we create everyone and everything that we see with our own mind. So the entire world as we know it is our dream. That concept is so fun. Because if we aren't enjoying life, we don't have to change life. We don't have to change all the circumstances. The only thing we have to change is our dream. So if we're having a nightmare in our day, we don't have to change the day. We just have to change the projector, change the dream. So he goes on to describe how the dream was created. And I'm going to go into that. And then we'll talk about how to change the dream. And when he says we're not enjoying the dream, he says that is hell. And when we are enjoying the dream, we're in heaven. So he has some very specifics about how to get to heaven, and those are his 4 agreements. And I'm going to get into those, but first let's talk about how the dream was created. So Miguel says that when we were born, we didn't know we were in a dream because we were just part of it. We were part of the world. We didn't have this suffering from the past and past thoughts that plagued us, and we didn't have worry about the future. We were just being. You know, you look at a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, and they laugh from their belly, and they cry when they're upset, and they just are. Like there's none of this. They just they're just being. And then when we get to be about 3, 4, 5, we start to seek the attention of others, and this is when the dream starts. So because we want the attention of our mom, our dad, our teachers, our friends, we start pretending to be who we are not, just to be good enough to get their attention. To please others, we start acting, and we have a fear of rejection and not being good enough. Eventually, through this acting and pretending, we become people we actually are not. When we are people we are not, we start to have this inner judge who judges everything, and an inner victim who feels judgment of ourselves and judgment of others and feels like a victim. The judge bases all of its judgments, our inner judge, based on the beliefs of the dream of society. And society's dream is just a dream. It's just made up thoughts of a bunch of people, but it doesn't mean that these thoughts are real. The whole dream is based on these false thoughts. Miguel argues 95% of the beliefs stored in our mind are actually lies. Lies is a strong word. I would say, if we want to go down this path, 95% of the thoughts in our mind are partial truths, because it's very impossible to know the very real truth. All we can see is what we think, and that's our dream. He says anytime we feel fear, anger, revenge, suffering, that we are in a nightmare. So we created the image of perfection to try to please mom, please dad, please brothers and sisters, please teachers, please our priests or religious figures, please our bosses. And the fear of rejection from them is actually the fear of being my true self. I've got this image of perfection that came from what I think other people want of me. I start acting to try to be that. But the thing is, I will never be perfect. We'll never be perfect from this point of view. Not being perfect because we can't live up to this image of the ideal self. I reject myself. When we are not good enough for ourselves because we don't fit our image of perfection, we beat ourselves up. And then we feel terrible. And when we feel terrible, we beat other people, them, and try to give our poison off to them. He goes on to say, we wear a social mask, afraid that others will notice that we are not who we pretend to be. And of course, we're pretending to be someone else to try to please everyone else. He goes on to say that we judge everyone based on our image of perfection, and naturally, they all fall short. If you can resonate with this, and I certainly can, then you know what this image of the dream or the nightmare or hell, according to Miguel Ruiz, really is. And I'm going to help you wake up, because there's 4 agreements. He said, if you follow these 4 agreements, never, ever, ever again will you be in hell. If you follow these 4 agreements, you will live the rest of your life in heaven. How freaking cool is that? So let's hear the 4 agreements. Agreement 1, be impeccable with your word. Now, the word impeccable can be misleading. What he means by be impeccable with your word is the only things you can speak and think are things of love. Now, that's pretty deep, and let's break it down a little bit. According to Miguel Ruiz in this book, everything at the base of every human, at the base of every single thing in the universe is love, that we live in a friendly universe. And if all we ever see when we see other people is a loving being doing the best that they can and kind of suffering from the judge and the victim and all their thoughts and their nightmare that they have going on, trying to live up to perfection. But if we see them as just this loving being, we are being impeccable with our thoughts. And if we see everyone else as loving beings doing the best that they can, and our thoughts are loving, then our words are loving. What if we see ourselves as loving? And we see ourselves as these loving beings, and we love and accept everything that we do, and we forgive our parents for everything they did, and we forgive our siblings for everything they did, and we forgive God for any misgivings that there were, and we finally forgive and love ourselves. And if you get to this level, and the only words you speak are words of love to yourself and to others, you are impeccable with your word. That's the first agreement. The second agreement, don't take anything personally. Loving beings who are trying to live up to perfection and judging everything that they can't live up to and beating themselves up, they give themselves all this self-abuse because they're not perfect, say things that are all about them and their dream. And when they're speaking out of their nightmare, out of their hell, don't take it personally. It's just them. They're still this beautiful, loving being, this angel on earth, doing the best that they can, living in hell. So just give them love and empathy and don't take it personally. Agreement 3, don't make assumptions. So we all make up these stories. We call a friend and they don't answer, and we try them again, maybe the next day, and they don't answer. And then next week we text them, hey, are you okay? And then they don't answer, and all of a sudden our mind is racing off with assumptions and stories about maybe I upset them the last time I spoke to them, or maybe they saw something I posted on social about life being a dream and they didn't agree with it. Now they're not going to talk with me ever again. And it turns out that they were just going through a really tough time. And all of our assumptions about how they didn't like us had nothing to do with what was really going on. So don't make assumptions. And agreement number 4, always do your best. This agreement is where Miguel says, it's okay if you're not always impeccable with your word. It would be impossible to be there 100% of the time, but just do your best. It's okay if you sometimes take things personally. You're probably not going to live up to this perfection of not being able to take everything personally, but just do your best. And it's okay if sometimes you still make assumptions, but just do your best. And if you can live the 4 agreements of being impeccable with your word, only speaking love and seeing love in yourself and others, not taking things personally, not making assumptions, and always doing your best, you live a life of heaven. That is what I hope for you. It's what I hope for me and everyone that I know. Thank you so much for watching, and lots of love.